Bill O'Reilly decided it would be a good idea to crap all over the idea of popular elections, and he did so in a very blatant and uncoded way that's uncharacteristic of conservative ideology. They still believe this shit, but they don't generally say it out loud so clearly as O'Reilly's about to do here. Take a look.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Abolishing the Electoral College. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo.
I'm sure you know where this is going. O'Reilly's going to make the argument that everybody having the same voting power as everyone else is a terrible idea. You're going to be surprised at how blatantly he explains why he thinks it's a terrible idea, but go ahead.
After Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, the left in America is demanding that the Electoral College system put into place in 1787 be scrapped.
Important clarification here. Liberals are calling for the scrapping of the Electoral College after Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. The left isn't doing it in response to Hillary Clinton. We're doing it because we don't like republicanism or the structure America is based around to begin with. Very different reasons here. He's going to equate liberalism and the left here very much, but I'll pipe in every time he does that because I need to clarify that. They're not the same.
But there's a hidden reason for this.
It's not that hidden. Democracy is a good idea. That's not very hard to figure out. And we don't really keep it a secret.
As we reported, even though Secretary Clinton won the popular vote by 2.8 million, the progressive state of California provided all of that margin, Clinton defeating Trump there by about 4.3 million votes. So if the Electoral College were abolished, presidential candidates could simply campaign in the nation's largest states and cities.
So? That's where the people are. Like, if there are votes that you're trying to get, it makes sense to go where there are a lot of people to try and get votes.
New York, LA, Chicago, Houston, and rack up enough votes to pretty much win any election.
And also, I'm not even sure that's true, because if every vote counted the same amount of weight, then why would there be a tendency to focus exclusively on certain areas if every single vote counts? Why wouldn't you just try and get as many votes as you can, anywhere you can?
That's what the left wants. That's what they want. Because in the large urban areas and blue states like New York and California, minorities are substantial. Look at the landscape. Philadelphia, Dallas-Fort Worth, Miami. In all of these places, the minority vote usually goes heavily to the Democrats.
To clarify, this is a huge mistake, but only because it's in the confines of the two-party capitalist system that America is under, not because they should instead go to Republicans. But if that's what Bill O'Reilly thinks, shouldn't he focus more on trying to get minority voters to believe that the Republican Party is better for them? Because why wouldn't he just want to win? Wouldn't he just try and convince his audience that the black voters would be better off? Well, not his audience. His audience is not black at all, or hardly any minorities in his audience, I'm sure. But shouldn't he get the members of the audience he has that are minorities and try and convince minorities in general to vote for the right instead of just assuming that any vote goes to one party? That's a very limited way of thinking. I don't want the Republicans to gain more ground, but that would at least make sense that we're better for everyone, vote for us instead of don't.
Head to that New York City, LA, and Chicago, San Francisco. Don't really have a national election anymore, do you?
If every vote counts the same in an election that determines a national position, then of course you do.
They have targeted populations.
Targeted populations where there are people who vote in elections. I don't see why O'Reilly thinks this is a problem.
Newspapers like the New York Times and the LA Times have editorialized to get rid of the Electoral College. They well know that neutralizing the largely white rural areas in the Midwest and South will assure liberal politicians get power and keep it.
Why? Why, Bill O'Reilly? Is it because you're sure that brown folks and Asian folks would never listen to you? Why do you think that is? Don't you think there's something wrong with your ideology if you know certain segments of the population based on their race would not listen to you? Shouldn't that say to you that your ideology is racist at its core?
Talking Points believes this is all about race. The left sees white privilege in America as an oppressive force.
Because it is, and you're proving that right now with this segment. The Electoral College is literally a giant example of white privilege.
That must be done away with. Therefore, white working class voters must be marginalized.
There's a common quote about this. When you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. I don't know who said that initially, but it does fit here, because O'Reilly believes that making the white vote equal in weight to the votes of everyone else would marginalize white voters. He literally believes that making a vote equal marginalizes the group that has an unequal amount of power. He thinks the white vote naturally deserves this unequal amount of power because that is what America was founded on, and he believes it should stay that way. I don't know why he doesn't see the huge problem just in the optics of what he's saying, but what he's saying is clearly horrible.
And what better way to do that than center the voting power in the cities,
where there are a lot of people who vote. Again, I don't see the problem with this at all. Every vote should be of equal weight. So it makes sense to focus on places where there are a lot of people so you can get a lot of votes. What's so hard to understand about this?
Very few commentators will tell you that the heart of liberalism in America today is based on race.
He's actually partially correct here. There are a few problems with the way liberals focus on things like racial and gender identity. See, what liberals tend to do is that instead of focusing on the oppressive systems that keep certain demographics down, they focus instead on symbolic diversity. Put another way, it's okay to have massive income inequality and wage labor and capitalism at the exploitation and for the profits of very few rich people, as long as the rich people are racially, ethnically, and gendered diverse, so that they can celebrate their achievements in equality. They want to maintain the system, but put a diverse appearance on it. That's liberals. The left wants to make the system not inherently unequal in its foundation, so that equality of race and gender and ethnicity and every other demographic symbol naturally occurs in a more egalitarian system like worker control over the means of production and democracy. That's the left. Now, Bill O'Reilly obviously has no idea that a take on identity politics can be so nuanced, and he has no idea that that someone like me isn't going to defend liberalism because I'm a radical, not a liberal. So he would have no idea that he's correct for the exact wrong reason.
It permeates almost every issue.
Because white supremacy permeates through capitalism, and capitalism permeates almost every issue. It's not that hard to figure out.
That white men have set up a system of oppression. That system must be destroyed.
Yes, exactly. Specifically, white men have set up the system of capitalism and republicanism, and those systems must be destroyed. He thinks he's talking about liberals who want to do that, but who wants to do that are leftists and socialists. So, again, just filling in the gaps here.
Bernie Sanders peddled that. To some extent, Hillary Clinton did.
No, they didn't. Bernie Sanders permeated some class politics, but did not understand enough the intersectionality of class oppression and identity. So, and Hillary Clinton permeated identity politics alone, but thought the economic system was just fine the way it was. So, and neither of them got to the heart of this issue, of course, because they're running in a capitalist bourgeois democracy. So they would not ever want to acknowledge that capitalism needs to be abolished in order for the people to have the most power possible. They wouldn't do that because it's against the very structure of the American system. So they can't do that.
And the liberal media tries to sell that all day long.
No, it doesn't. It would be better if it did. The leftist media, as infinitesimally small as it is, tries to sell that. The liberal media tries to sell symbolic diversity like Hillary Clinton does. So, no, it's true, so whoever's the media should be selling it, but they're not doing that. Bill O'Reilly would love to be the victim and pretend that the media is selling the reality of white supremacy and democracy that's lacking, but that would threaten his power as a rich white man who wants to maintain capitalism, so it plays well into his victim narrative.
So-called white privilege, bad. Diversity, good.
Again, not for its own sake. White privilege is definitely bad, but it's bad in the sense that everyone should get the types of benefits of the doubt that white people tend to get by virtue of being white. So, white privilege is definitely bad and needs to be destroyed as an exclusive thing because it should be privilege for everybody. And currently, white people are occupying most privilege, so yes, in that sense, white privilege definitely needs to be destroyed. And diversity also is not good in its own sake. It can't be good unless the economic and social systems are destroyed along with it to have a different power structure in order for a truly egalitarian socialist society where the people have the most power they can. So he's sort of misrepresenting it. When he's mocking it, he's not even mocking it quite correctly, but he's mocking it as if it weren't true, but it definitely is. Capitalism, white supremacy, white privilege all need to go.
If you look at the voting patterns, it's clear that the Democrats are heavily reliant on the minority vote, also on the woman vote.
From your point of view, wouldn't a better way to fix that, to mitigate that, be to try and convince your audience and the people who are not voting for your ideology to instead vote for your ideology? But you know you can't do that because your ideology would inherently oppress people. Now, unfortunately, liberalism would inherently oppress people also, but would look better and prettier doing it. So that's a lot harder to convince people to break away from the capitalist duopoly and the Republican system. But again, Bill O'Reilly is not taking that into account because he wants to maintain the white power structure. He literally does. He admits that.
White men have largely abandoned the Democrats, and the left believes this is because of racism.
Not necessarily. We believe it's because of capitalism and controlled opposition and the idea of manufacturing consent. Racism is just included in all of that.
They want to punish minorities, keep them down.
If you want to maintain capitalism, a system where not everybody has equal political or economic power, then yes, that is exactly what you want to do. Punish minorities and keep them down.
So that's what's really going on when you hear about the Electoral College and how unfair it allegedly is.
Just a cursory glance, even not taking into account the structural oppression that's inherent in capitalism, what seems more fair to you? A system where every vote is counted equally, or a system where not every vote is counted equally?
Summing up, left wants power taken away from the white establishment. They want a profound change in the way America is run.
There he goes again, using the left and liberals interchangeably. But yes, we want power stripped away from the white establishment and a profound change in how America is run. And we have no shame in that. So yes, we want to profoundly change the way America is run.
Taking voting power away from the white precincts is the quickest way to do that.
Stripping unequal power away from the white precincts, so-called white precincts, is the quickest way to do that. But in a popular democracy, there would be no white precincts because every vote would count the same. So the quickest way to make America more equal in this regard is to make every vote count the same. Some important clarifications here. First of all, I am not simply suggesting that getting rid of the Electoral College and replacing it with the popular vote for the presidency, the plurality vote for the presidency, the first past the post vote for the presidency would make America automatically a democracy. It would simply be one way in which every vote counts the same. But as long as America is still a republic, and as long as America is still a capitalist republic, we cannot be a democracy because political and government voting is not all that makes a democracy. What makes a democracy is also economic say, economic power, say in the community, say in the workplace. That's all part of what makes a democracy also, and getting rid of the Electoral College is not the only thing that needs to be done. First of all, first past the post voting is undemocratic as well, even if we were to get rid of the Electoral College. And the reason for that is that we can end up with a system where most of the people who are voting for a candidate and the candidate ends up winning, and people who voted mostly wanted someone other than that candidate. So that means that if there's a three-way race, we could get a situation where as many as 2/3 of the public does not approve of the candidate chosen. Secondly, we need a system of proportional representation in a system like Congress, but maybe it would be structured slightly differently in a socialist society. If there is to be a state, I don't know if there should be a formal state. But the thing about how this should be is that every vote would factor in to political decision making. So if a party, for example, would get 5% of the total vote, that would mean they would get 5% of the total seats up for election. Thirdly, I want to have a system where we rank our choices for voting, and so that we don't spoil a candidate for a system with a singular winner like the presidency. But even then, it might be more democratic to have a system where the people with the largest share of the party vote gets to elect a representative, which would serve in a system similar to the presidency. So a parliamentary democracy in government would be the way to maintain a democratic will, as long as proportional representation is honored and every district with every seat has an equal number of participants in it and no vote is wasted. Secondly, we need democracy in the workplace and democracy in the economy as a whole, because we cannot have democracy with only voting for candidates to represent our alleged will. We need a direct say in our will. And we need a direct say in economy, direct say in the culture, direct say in the workplace. We need to decide how to run our own lives ourselves. And just a political democracy is not the right way to do that. Liberal republicanism is not democracy because it eliminates a very, very, very large part of cultural and societal life that would be present in a true socialist democracy. In short, it is not just a democracy because people vote for it. That is only a very, very, very small part of what makes a democratic society. To make a democratic society possible, we need a way for people to have the most control over their lives as they possibly can. Finally, and this is a point I'll make about the media specifically, once journalists gain control of the news media, they would immediately be contradicting their very role if a conservative commentator were to ask for democracy in the workplace and in society to be rescinded from the public. Who could imagine Bill O'Reilly possibly saying, "No, please, I want Rupert Murdoch to extract value from me that I created, and I want Rupert Murdoch to keep that value for himself. I would like to be exploited, please." Who would actually say that? See, this is partially why we need to work with conservative members of the proletariat. Now, Bill O'Reilly is technically an employee at Fox News, but he's still rich, so he wouldn't understand fully the concept of systematic oppression. But he certainly would understand that Rupert Murdoch is not a journalist. He is simply someone who takes money for being the owner of a network. Of course, Bill O'Reilly, being the conservative that he is and being the racist that he is, and being against egalitarianism like he is, he would not make it in an audience that was class conscious. He would not have the guts in himself to run a network. He wants to be comfortable. He wants to rant about perceived social ills without actually doing anything himself to change them. And that's where a worker-controlled news organization or any media organization would come in and control and stop and start running society ourselves and influence the public in a way they need to be influenced to give them the power they need to have the most control over their lives as humanly possible. For Democratize the Media, I'm Jeremy Einbinder. Solidarity and resist.